So we'll start off with the session. Before that, I just want to give a quick intro about saasguru. Uh, saasguru is a platform where you can supercharge your certification preparation, and it will be a huge thing for you to learn via saasguru because it will be tailor-made for how you are here and how expert are you in a particular topic. It also helps you in gamification and summarizing the content, which develops interest in your mind rather than boring you with unnecessary clutter. What I can say in short is Sadhguru empowers you a with a dedicated mentoring team, content team. We have regular live classes. We do specific projects which are related to topics which you like and which can help you in your career. And we also give a lot of career guidance. If I had to speak in short, I could say that Sadhguru is a bridge between learning and certification. How do we do that? We have certain benchmarks, and with those benchmarks, you can track your performance and plan accordingly. We also revise and personalize the topic with you and also give you ample practice tests. Plus, we also have a dedicated gurus team who provide you one-on-one mentorship for any topic or any project which you would like. So I would say that it's easy for you if you join the SAS Guru Slack community for you because we have a lot of certification vouchers. We provide product tips and updates. We also hold live classes and webinars. We hold doubt sessions just for certain topics. And we also have 24/7 dedicated help from our gurus. So in the chat box, I'll be dropping the Slack community link and also the LinkedIn link. I feel you should check out the LinkedIn link. You LinkedIn community also. There's a lot of engagement and a lot of content there. And if you join the Slack community, we can help you supercharge anyway, even on your certification prep. Thank you. Pankaj, you can take over.
So welcome everybody to the series of sessions. In first three, we talked about LWC. And now we would be having a glimpse of flows. And before I start flow, I just want to give you a quick recap of how this flow has evolved and how the process automation tools within Salesforce has evolved. So I believe those who are in Salesforce ecosystem, so they might have used workflows, and after workflow there was process builder, and then flows, and there were variety of or variants of flows in between. There were flow designer or a different version of flow before this, but finally we are uh, at a place wherein we are now ready to say goodbye to other automation tools like workflows and process builder. Not immediately, but it is going to sunset in coming future. So with that, flow is the future, what I would say. And as soon as the capabilities of flows are increasing day by day, we do have variety of flows which could be used in variety of different use cases. And we can use these flows based on what our business needs are. And you'll be seeing lot of different variations or the use cases which is going to cater. And gradually you could see there are some cases wherein you could replace your triggers or the new scenarios which we used to build it using triggers. Now we would be building using flows. So we'll be seeing it in a bit. What is a flow? So maybe a formal definition. So flow is an automation tool, right? And using flow we could do lot of automations, like we can come up with screens, we can create, update, delete records. We can run SOQLs. Even we can have some batch schedule or automation process schedule in the background. Also, flows are now capable to listen to platform events as well. So these all things now could be achieved using flows. Before we jump into various types of flows, I just want you guys to be familiar with basic concepts or basic keywords which we would be using in the flow journey in today's session. So the first is flow builder. So flow builder is nothing but the tool itself by using which you could create your flows, right? So this is a flow builder. As soon as you click on new, you would see variety of options here. So this is flow builder itself. Flow version. So when you create a flow, see on the screen, there are various types of flow. And whenever you create any type of flow, every flow has a version. For example, you're able to see this V2, right? So you create a flow, you activate it, and if you need to do some modification on top of it, you always create another version of flow. You cannot make changes in previous version of flows. So every time you have activated a flow, a new version would be created and you would be working on the other version or the newest version. All the versions would be retained within Salesforce. If you want to deactivate one of the version and activate other, that is something also possible. Now the next term is flow interview. Flow interview is nothing but an instance of the flow. So when flow runs, we call it as flow interviews. Okay. And then flow elements. So flow elements comprises of interaction, logic, and data. So at a very high level, let us understand using these flow, we could be having certain interactions with the users. There is a place wherein we could put in all our logics, and there are certain place within the flow by which you can operate on the data, right? So at a very high level, flow elements comprises of interactions, logics, and data. We'll be seeing it in more detail in coming slides. The other term is flow connector. When you see a flow, every flow is connected with, so let's say this is a flow and this is connected with this is the start of the flow and this is connected with an action, right? So these are nothing but the connectors. So let me show you other variant, maybe that would give you a better picture. Yeah, so this is another example of flow, and either this is a screen, right? And this is create, just I talked about, right? So I talked about interactions, I talked about data. So this screen thing is coming from interaction. This create record is coming from data, right? And these are the various connectors, and it tells that what needs to be executed when. And then the other thing is flow resource. So flow resource are like temporary variables. So for example, when you create a flow, uh, for the flow itself, you could create certain variables like you do in code, Apex code, right? So if you have to use certain variables, then you declare some variables and put in certain value to hold temporarily, and then based on that you do something else. Similarly, we do have various resources, right? And it could be maybe in a form of variable, it could be maybe in a form of constant, it could be in a form of formula. So after speaking about these basic concepts, flow builder is flow app itself by which we create flows, then flow version, flow interview, flow element, and then flow connector and flow resources. After talking about this, let us talk about various types of flow which we have. Okay. So we could have 5 types of flow currently in Salesforce. So the first one is screen flow. Other one is auto launch flow. Next is schedule trigger flow. And the other is record triggered flow. And the last is platform event trigger flow. So let's talk about all of them one by one. So when there is a need wherein you need to create a screen and you want some user input, right? Maybe you have to create a registration form, or you need to have a screen by which you want to quickly create a lead in the system. So whenever there is user interaction involved, in such cases we always go with screen flows. Okay, and this screen flows could be either launched by some action, I mean on a click of a button, or you could place these screen flows maybe on app page, home page, or record page. So this is all about screen flow. Now let's jump to the other type of flow, which is called auto launched flow. So auto launched flow can be used to perform automated tasks in the background. If you compare it with the screen flow, I said screen flow would be used when user interaction is required. But auto launch flow, there is no user interaction required, and it works like a subflow. So it could be maybe you want to have some logic written, automation logic written at a place, and that could be acting as a subflow, and you can invoke this automation logic through various places like Apex classes or a custom button or a link, right? So this could be one of the use case, like if you want to count the number of call activities, right, and emails logged against a lead. So this could be used in order to achieve that. Now let's talk about schedule trigger flow. So schedule trigger flow, again, it runs in the background, but it is being invoked at a particular time or a scheduled time. So for example, let's say I want to delete all the open tasks older than 3 months, right? So what happens? I need a process in the background which could go and check whether these tasks are 3 months old or not. If yes, then it could delete it. The other use case could be weekly. Maybe it sends welcome email to some users, right? So this is a process wherein we want it to be executed at a certain interval or certain point in time, right? Unlike the auto launch flow, wherein we were having Apex classes, or we were having custom buttons, and again user is either clicking on the button or the link, or maybe it is being invoked from Apex class, but there is no screen involved in auto launch flow. Similarly, scheduled trigger flow also runs in the background, but it runs at a specified time. And now let's talk about the other flow, which is record triggered flow. Record triggered flow, if you know triggers, then you'd be able to compare it easily. So if you want to perform certain logic, maybe on creation of a record, or maybe on uh, updation of the record, or if you're deleting a record and you want to perform certain logic, then you can do it. But you can have an event called undelete on triggers, but this event is not available in record triggers flow. Otherwise, you can perform more or less similar stuff with out of box solution rather than going to custom way wherein you need to do a lot of coding. And the last one is platform event trigger flow. I believe everybody is aware of platform events. So if no, just I will talk about in a minute. Just a quick introduction of platform event. So if you were there in the last session, I talked about pub sub model, wherein there is a channel or event bus. Somebody is publishing certain events and somebody is subscribing those events. So platform event is one of the technique by which this could be achieved. So some certain event within Salesforce could publish these platform events, and Salesforce itself can subscribe and listen to it and act upon it, and the system other than Salesforce who is subscribed to this channel could also act based on the platform event fired from Salesforce. So now what I'm trying to say here is this flows are capable of hearing those platform events, right? And based on certain platform event being invoked or maybe fired, these flows would be able to sense that, and they would be able to perform certain tasks based on whatever configurations you have made. So at a very high level, these are 5 types of flows. I'll just repeat the name at least: screen flow, auto launch flow, schedule trigger flow, record trigger flow, and platform event triggered flow. Now let us have a closer look on flow elements. I talked about flow element consist of interaction elements, logic elements, and data elements. Right? Let me show you on the screen. See, within interaction, I have screen, action, and subflow. Within logic, I have assignment, decision, loop, collection sort, collection filter. So these are within the logic, and on the data part, we have create record, update record, get record, delete record, and rollback records. So using all these interaction, logic, and data, we always create certain flow in order to achieve the automation goals of the project. For example, uh, I have created a flow. This flow shows a screen. The name of the screen I have put in as flow screen demo. I have created 2 fields here with the name demo name and demo date, right? So these 2 fields I have put in on the screen. And then once somebody would click on this finish button, I would like to create a demo record. So demo is a custom object in the org wherein I have 2 fields called demo name and demo date. Okay, so from the screen, I am asking or expecting user to fill in these 2 values, and then I can have some logic in the background. I would use this create record, and using this, I would be creating the record. Let me show you that. So when you go here, it will ask you how many records you want to create. I would say 1 because on the screen I am capturing detail of 1 record, hence I am using 1. And then what I'm saying is use separate resources and literal values. If I want to copy a record, I could have used this option, but now I want to put the values of each of the fields separately. And then I have chosen the object. As I mentioned before, this demo is a custom object which I have created for the demo purpose. And this has two field. One is the name field, other one is the date field. And see, these are the resources or the variables. They are automatically created. As soon as I have created these two fields, these variables are automatically created. You see, demo date and demo name. Yeah. And then if a record is successful, I want to show certain error. And if this creation of record fails, I want to show a error on the screen. And this is my entire flow looks like, right? So talking about this flow elements, you could use, or you could have multiple combination of these elements, interactions, logics, and data elements, which would be sufficing your all the needs based on the use case. Now, flow resources. So as I mentioned before, these resources could be variables, like the one which we saw here. These are demo date and demo name are the variables. There could be some global constants like true or false. So for example, there is a Boolean field, and if we want to check its value, so we would be using this global constant. There could be certain global variables as well. If you guys are familiar with Apex, then you know that you could use some of the variables from the user record itself, right? Similarly, you could use profile name. So these are called global variables. Constants are something which remains constant. If you want to have certain fixed value stored in some temporary place, so you could use constants and keep it there, right? Also, we can use formulas and pick list values as well. So these are various types of flow resources available. Now what we do, before jumping to the testing flow, I'll try to run this flow and talk about this flow in more detail. So in order to have this flow, I just mentioned I have created a screen. I have created I have used a data element called create record. And then when this is successful, I have created another screen, and it just shows a message saying record has been created successfully. Other screen is used when there is some error, and I want to show this message which says record creation failed. Please contact abc@saasguru.com. Okay. And this would end our flow. So in order to test it, we have two options here. One is run it, another one is debug it, right? So when you click on run, it runs as it would run for end users. But when you click on debug, it will run like end users along with some more details. Let us see it together. I'm clicking on this run first. So as soon as I clicked on it, you are seeing these two fields, which I have just shown you, I have created on the screen, right? And maybe let us name it as flow demo 001. Okay. And from the backend, I have made both the field as mandatory field. From the UI, this date is not mandatory. Let us leave it blank and let us click on next button and see what happens. As soon as I clicked here, I'm seeing a message which says record creation failed. Please contact abc@saasguru.com. So this is end user's view. So by seeing it, you would never know what went wrong, right? So I can go back here and maybe I'll put a date and show you the other message. Now the message has changed and it says record has been created successfully. If I go here and see this demo flow demo 001 has been created successfully, right? Now let's say you are on this flow and something is going wrong and you don't know what it is, right? So what we could do is we could go to this debug option. Let me click on that. When you go to this debug option, or when you click on this debug button, it would give you these checkboxes. And let us talk about these checkboxes one by one. So one says run the latest version of each flow called by subflow element. So this is uh, exactly what I talked about before, that there could be multiple versions of the flow. And by checking this, your latest version would be running every time. And the other checkbox says show details of what's executed and render flow in the lightning runtime. And there is another option also, which is called as run flow as another user. So let's say you are a system admin and maybe you have developed this flow and you have deployed it for somebody else. Or let's say you haven't deployed, even you want to test it for some other users, right? So in order to do that, you can check this checkbox and then select any user from the org. So it would be like login as option, wherein we can log in as somebody else and see how the system behaves for the person. Similarly, if you want to check the flow, you need not to explicitly log in as any other person. You can just check this checkbox and select any of the users whose behavior you want to look at. I'm just going with my user itself. I clicked on this run, right? So as soon as I clicked on this run, I am seeing these two fields again. And now maybe let me put the name as test demo 0002. And for now, I'll not fill in this date. And I know from the backend, this date is mandatory at the field level and this flow will break. But let us see how this happens and how system let you know when something goes wrong. I'm clicking on this next button. You are getting this message. Along with this message, you see this part wherein it clearly says that error has occurred and required field was missing. You are seeing the values as well, right? Wherein you are seeing the name is populated with this value and the date is populated with null, right? So it clearly tells you each of the variables which you have used. And based on that, I would know that this date field is mandatory field and I should be filling it always. Or in order to fix it, maybe I'll just make this field as mandatory from this flow UI as well, right? So for now, let us put some date and see how this message changes now. And I'm expecting a new record should be created. Let me click on this next button. Yeah. So as soon as I clicked on this next button, now you see this is successful. Even you are seeing the record ID and you are seeing the values as well. Test demo 002 and the date is this, right? So, so this is how we can test it. We do have two options. One is the run option, another one is the debug option, right? So let us talk about these flows in more detail. So testing flow options, we have debug button I just talked about, right? I also talked about the user context. So for which user you want to test the flow. There is some mechanism called rollback mode. If you enable that rollback mode, whatever testing you are doing, data won't be committed, right? Also, we saw the run button and it shows you the end user's experience, right? Now, when do error message shows up? So when you are running a flow and you want to know that what are the different places this message shows up. So as soon as a flow is broken, you would see something went wrong message. For this, we are not seeing something went wrong because I have explicitly handled those faults, right? You see it here. While creating the record, if I did not put in all the mandatory field values, it was breaking, but you were seeing an error message, which is this, instead of the standard or the generic message, which says something went wrong. Also, if something went wrong or something goes wrong, as a system admin, you will receive an email stating the same. For example, this is one of the run which I have tried, and you get the entire debug log here, which would clearly talk about what went wrong. So this is all about the message thing, and definitely we just saw that we can customize the error message. Instead of this generic something went wrong message, you want to show more user friendly messages, then you can have fault connectors. So these are called fault connectors. If there is a fault, I want to connect it with some another screen, and I want to show up the message. So this is one of the good practices we should be following. Others good practices we'll be seeing in a bit, but this is one of them. Yeah. Now let's talk about the context. So I believe everybody knows we do have user context and system context. So whenever we are running Apex or any batches, so it runs in user context, or we could have classes based on the parameters or based on the settings we have made. It could run in the system mode or a user mode, right? So similarly, flow also runs in two contexts. One is user context, wherein it honors all the sharing accesses, objects, fields, etc. And it could also run in a system context. So there is one option by which you can, while creating a flow, you could set this context on the flows itself. And the other question is how this context is determined. So the context is determined or depends on how the flow is launched. Flow, if it is launched or it is embedded within your Lightning app page, buttons, actions, or Experience Cloud site, it always runs in a user context. And if a flow is launched via maybe a scheduled flow, then it would run in a system context. And flow launched by Apex classes depends on the code, whether you want to run it in the system mode or a user mode. And talking about deployment, so flows could be easily deployed using change sets or metadata API. So whatever tools you are using, you could still use it and deploy these flows. One thing which needs to be kept in mind is if we are deploying any of the flow which is in active state, then entire test classes runs, and that coverage should be at least 75%, which is agreed, right? And otherwise you won't be able to deploy this in an active mode. Now let's talk about best practices. So as we know, in Apex classes, we always say that we should not be putting any SOQL or DMLs in for. Similarly, we should not be using any DML statement inside loop element, which is a pink element in the loop. Let me show you that. So this one, right? So if you're using this loop, you should not be using either of these. You should not be using create record or update record or get record within this loop element. Otherwise, it would run into governor limit issues. Then choose the trigger type in the record triggered flow. Uh, so what happens if you are going with the record triggered flow, and if you want to operate on before save context, so ideally we should not be using any DMLs explicitly. Ideally we should be using before save context if you want to update the same record on which we are firing this record triggered flow. So it would be a way faster than if you would be using in after context. And then define the trigger order in a record trigger flow. We can in the record triggered flow we can define the order, and we should be passing the entire record screen flow through an action, so that we do not need to get the add elements one by one. So if there is the entire record, then we could be using all its value wherever needed. And the other one says you should be using fault connectors. This is we just saw wherein when we are doing or performing some DML operations, so it is good to have some fault connectors. If something goes wrong, then we can have these messages rather than some generic message and user would be not able to know it. And since these flows are getting more powerful day by day, the recommendation is you should start using flows. Maybe you could extend your flows or expand use these Apex classes or your components or solutions, and try to use more flows within that wherever it is possible. Okay, and then there is some questions for everybody. So what we will do, let's say this is question 1, this is question 2, and this is question 3. Everybody try to write his answer as maybe A, B, C, D, and then in a minute I'll talk about this and answers and explain this. I'll read it out. Along with debug to test the flow builder, what other features can be leveraged by administrator to test screen flow? So you could choose any of the 4 options. Maybe you can just take a note of it. Flow connectors, flow elements, flow interviews, flow resources. And now jumping to the next question, which is the administrator at Cosmo Property has created a new flow to complete a task for CSAT when a case is closed. The admin has noticed that the task record are not getting created. How can the admin identify the issue? So can he create a report on flow history? Should he be using debug the flow at a runtime using Apex? Should he be using native debug feature in the flow? Or he should be reviewing debug logs with the flow logging level? So these are the 4 options. You can choose your choices. And let's talk about the other question, which is Autocar wants its customer to search for in-network automotive insurance provider from their website without logging in. Which feature can administrator use to fulfill this need? One is Web2 lead, other one is screen flow, next is Web2 case, and the last one is auto launch flow. So the first one is flow interviews. So along with the debug button, so flow interviews is the running instance of the flows, and using that you could able to debug. So flow interview is the one of the feature, right? And the other question was the administrator at Cosmo Property has created a new flow to complete a task, but he was not able to see the record or record was not being created. So in that case, we could use the native debug feature, which we just saw some time back, right? And the other question was related to a feature wherein I want to show this component on external website. This is something which is also possible using screen flows. So screen flow is the right answer. Now let us jump to another slide. So this talks about or gives you a quick overview uh, based on two factors. Um, those factors are simplicity and flexibility among various automation tools we have. So we have workflow, process builder, flow, and Apex. So as we move from workflow to Apex, simplicity would decrease, which means workflow is simplest or simpler to work on. And as you go to process builder and then flow and then to Apex, that simplicity would decrease. And flexibility, if you talk about, it increases. So we do have lesser feature with workflows, bit more with process builder, bit more with flows, and bit more with Apex. I hope this is pretty straightforward. Yeah. Now let us see when to use what, and this is a very good comparison table wherein you'll be seeing what are the various feature process builder, flow, and workflow provide, and based on that you can take a call. For example, if I talk about complexity, then using process builder we can have multiple if and else statements. We can have multiple workflows merged together in process builder. These flows are a bit complex, but since this is complex because there are certain patterns and there is some knowledge you need to have before actually using all these flow elements and knowing that what is feature of what and how to use it and using what or which of these elements what would be achieved. So this knowledge you need to have before you actually work on the flow. And if I talk about workflow, it is single if else statement wherein if certain condition fulfills, then only it would be executing certain actions, otherwise it won't be. We cannot have multiple if else clubbed together in flows, right? Now let's talk about when this either of these process automation tools could be invoked. So process builder could be invoked either when the record is created or updated. It could be invoked from another process builder. It could be invoked from platform event messages as well. If I talk about flows, everything which could be done using process builder could be done here, but here we do have some more features, right? One of them is delete. So we cannot handle delete in process builders, but in flows we can. And everybody knows about workflow. So this is just create and update scenario. It could be catering. Now let's talk about time based actions. So all three of them are capable of handling time based actions. So there would be a question in mind, if all of them are capable, then now which one should I go ahead with? So as you talk about choosing of these tools, so always go with flows. And nowadays when you try to create a process builder, even Salesforce recommends and ask you to go to flow rather than creating new process builder. Now talking about creation of the record, process builder can create record, flow can create record, but in workflow you know that we can create not all object records, but we can create tasks certainly. And deleting of the records, so process builder cannot, workflow cannot, but flow can. Outbound messages all can do, right? In updating of the field, So process builder can update any related record, same record. Flow can do the same, and workflow can update record, same record on which it has been written, or maybe a parent if it holds a master detail relationship. So this is a quick comparison. If you want to know that what are capabilities, so this could be a cheat sheet for you, wherein you can clearly see it and get to know that whether something is possible using flow or not. Now I have another set of questions, just two. The first one is car wants to reduce the number of fields shown to sales rep when they are creating opportunities, as the rep do not have all the field level details at time of creation, right? So which process automation tool can administrator leverage to meet this requirement? You can choose the options. From these options, lightning component, process builder, flow builder, or validation rules. I think everybody would now agree that we should be going with flow builder itself. Now let's talk about another scenario wherein Sun Solar wants to view total order amount on a field on account, which is sum of amount of all activated orders on account. So, or there is order, there are a lot of order records. There is account, there are a lot of order records within that. Orders could be in activated state. So the ask is, I want to sum up the amount of all the activated orders and show it on the account level. So we could use, can we use Apex trigger to do it? Can we use roll-up summary field? Can we use workflow, or can we use flow to update it? So definitely we can do it using triggers, but I would go with flows because it is out-of-box solution, which is no code solution. So I think with that, we have come to the end of the session. And before I open up for Q&A, I just quickly want to show something else as well. So now since flows are getting a lot of popularities, uh, I would like to show you one option wherein which is called Flow Trigger Explorer. When you click on it, it will show all the flows which you have created object wise. For example, I want to see all the flows which are created on accounts and on the various events. So there is a possibility wherein over the period you could have created a lot of flows, and it is always difficult to find these, right, from opening these flows and then seeing what is happening within that. So this is a very good tool Salesforce has come up with, wherein you can go ahead and check all uh, flow rules which are already set up in the system. So with this, I'd say this is all for this session, and maybe I'd like to take some of the questions if you guys have.